He was sent to rewrite a war, but found himself trapped in a war against time itself. In the year 2095, the United States unlocks the impossible, a machine that can bend time itself.
In the year 2095, the United States had become the center of the world's most advanced technological empire. Cities stretched like glowing constellations across the land, connected by maglev highways and floating drone ports. But beneath the glittering skyline, a silent desperation gripped humanity. Climate collapse had pushed food to scarcity. Wars over resources had fractured continents, and despite all of mankind's innovation, the future looked darker with each passing decade. Amid this chaos, one institution stood as humanity's last beacon of hope, the Chronos Research Initiative. Hidden under the deserts of Nevada, funded secretly by the Pentagon and led by the nation's brightest physicists, Chronos claimed it had achieved the impossible, the ability to bend time itself. Rumors of a working time machine spread like wildfire among the scientific elite, though the public dismissed them as conspiracy theories. But the truth was more dangerous than any rumor. For within a chamber of shifting plasma rings and humming antimatter cores, Dr. Elara Monroe and her team had unlocked the first unstable window into the past. The discovery was not announced to the world because it was not safe, not stable, and not ready. Yet powerful men in Washington demanded results. They wanted the future rewritten before it was too late. Dr. Monroe had always dreamed of cracking the secrets of time. For her, it was not about military dominance or political power. It was about redemption. Her father had been a soldier stationed in New York during the infamous blackout riots of 2063, where millions died in the collapse of the Eastern Grid. She had been only 10 years old then, watching helplessly as her father's unit failed to evacuate her, mother and brother, in time. That day haunted her. The image of smoke and chaos burned into her soul. Every equation she wrote, every sleepless night staring at quantum diagrams, was fueled by the question, what if I could go back? What if I could save them? For decades, time travel had been dismissed as fantasy, shackled by paradoxes. But Monroe's equations proved that paradoxes weren't blockades. They were branching points. If reality split into multiple timelines, then one could step across them without annihilating the present. This concept, temporal branch theory, became the foundation of Chronos. It was radical, terrifying, and seductive. The military saw an opportunity: send soldiers back in time, alter wars, assassinate enemies before they rose to power, and rewrite history to favor America. Monroe, however, feared what such power would do to the world. But as the first successful test loomed, she realized she might no longer have a choice. The chamber where history itself was to be rewritten was a marvel of engineering. A massive underground dome lined with superconductive coils glowed with eerie blue light. At its center floated the Chrono Gate, a swirling ring of energy born from entangled particles stretched across dimensions. To step through it was to abandon certainty. The first human traveler had been chosen not by scientists, but by generals. His name was Captain Ryan Hale, a decorated soldier of the U.S. Special Forces. Strong, disciplined, and loyal, Hale was the kind of man who had seen too much war and carried it silently in his eyes. He had lost men in battles across Asia and Africa, scars etched not just on his skin, but his soul. To him, time travel was not science, it was duty. Washington ordered him to step into the past, specifically to the year 2071, during the Pacific conflict, when America had nearly lost control of its naval supremacy. His mission was clear: deliver classified intel that would prevent millions of American casualties and secure dominance for decades to come. To the generals, it was a perfect test. To Dr. Monroe, it was madness. The temporal fabric was not stable enough for human passage. But when the president himself ordered the operation to proceed, her protests were drowned in silence. On the morning of the launch, the desert facility buzzed with a mix of awe and fear. Soldiers lined the observation decks. Scientists calibrated quantum stabilizers, and a handful of government officials stood ready to witness history. Hale, dressed in an armored exosuit designed to withstand the crushing pressures of temporal distortion, walked steadily toward the Chrono Gate. Dr. Monroe intercepted him at the chamber's edge.
"Captain,"
she said, her voice trembling,
"this isn't just a mission.
This is a fracture point in human history. You don't know what you'll face out there. Hale, calm but unyielding, placed a gloved hand on her shoulder. Doc, I've faced worse than the past. If there's a chance to stop a war before it begins, I'll take it. The energy field surged, arcs of light snapping across the dome. The countdown began. Monroe wanted to scream, to pull the plug, but armed guards stood ready, ensuring compliance. As the timer hit 0, Hale stepped into the swirling vortex. For a moment, his body shimmered, stretched, and dissolved into streams of light. Then, with a thunderous crack, he vanished. The dome fell silent except for the hum of collapsing energy. A soldier had just walked into yesterday. At first, there was nothing but blinding white. Then Hale opened his eyes and gasped, finding himself standing in the middle of a war zone. Explosions thundered in the distance. Black smoke rose into the sky, and the acrid stench of gunpowder filled his lungs. He staggered, disoriented, before realizing he was exactly where the mission brief had described. The Battle of Honolulu. 2071 U.S. naval fleets were locked in brutal combat with an alliance of Pacific nations. Hale's exosuit buzzed with temporal recalibration, its system struggling to sync with the new timeline. Command, do you copy? He spoke into his comms. Static. The temporal jump had severed his connection with the present. He was alone. Pulling up his visor map, Hale saw the red-marked coordinates where the enemy's communications bunker was located, the target he had to destroy to alter the war's outcome. As he moved through the chaos, dodging artillery fire and fallen soldiers, a thought crept into his mind. If Monroe's theory was right, this wasn't his past. This was a branch, a separate reality. If he succeeded here, would it even save the future he left behind? Or was he simply damning another world to America's ambitions? The question gnawed at him, but duty pushed him forward. The battlefield roared with chaos as Hale pushed deeper into the burning ruins of Honolulu. Civilians screamed, buildings collapsed under drone strikes, and the ocean itself seemed aflame as missiles hammered naval vessels. Hale's exosuit absorbed shrapnel and shielded him from the worst of the destruction, but he couldn't ignore the faces of the terrified. Children running through the wreckage. He reminded himself, this isn't my timeline. This isn't my war. And yet the screams still cut into him like knives. Following his visor's HUD, Hale slipped through an alley littered with rubble until he found a group of U.S. Marines pinned down by enemy mechs. They weren't expecting him. Yet the sight of a heavily armored soldier charging into the firefight gave them new hope. Hale unleashed plasma rounds from his gauntlet rifle, tearing through enemy drones with precision. The Marines shouted, "Who the hell is this guy?" But Hale didn't answer. After all, he didn't exist in their reality. Once the mechs were disabled, Hale scanned the area. His target, the enemy's comms bunker, was just beyond the shoreline, heavily guarded. He knew he couldn't reach it alone, but he also couldn't reveal who he was. For the first time, he realized the paradox of being a ghost in history. He could save lives here, but every choice risked altering this world in ways no one could predict. Back at the Chronos facility in Nevada, the mood was tense. Dr. Monroe monitored fluctuating energy readings on her console, sweat dripping down her forehead. Hale had vanished into the time stream hours ago, and while his biometric sensors occasionally flickered on the screen, the signal was unstable. Generals barked orders demanding updates, but Monroe knew the truth. They had no control anymore. Once a traveler entered a branch reality, they were cut off, stranded in a world not their own. She slammed her fist against the console. "You've turned him into cannon fodder," she shouted at General Kessler, the man overseeing the mission. Kessler's jaw tightened. He's a soldier. He knew the risks. Monroe's voice shook with fury. "No, he didn't. You're using science you don't understand to rewrite history like it's a battlefield map. Do you realize the chaos this could unleash?" Kessler dismissed her concerns, focusing instead on the potential. "If Hale succeeds, we'll prevent the Pacific defeat. That changes everything. Imagine an America untouchable for centuries." Monroe stared at him, horrified. She realized the military didn't care about saving lives or securing peace. They wanted absolute dominance, and she had given them the weapon to achieve it. Meanwhile, Hale regrouped with the Marines he had saved, though he remained a mystery to them. They were battered, low on ammo, and their commander had been killed in the opening salvo. Against protocol, Hale decided to intervene. "I know where the enemy's comms hub is," he told them. His voice distorted through the helmet's filter. "If we take it out, we cripple their entire operation here." The Marines hesitated but followed. They didn't care who he was, any man willing to fight. Beside them was a brother in arms. Together they pushed through the smoking city, engaging enemy mechs, drones, and foot soldiers. Hale's advanced tech gave them an edge, turning battles that should have been losses into victories. The Marines whispered rumors among themselves. "He's not one of us. He's from the future." Hale ignored them, but deep down he knew they weren't wrong. As they neared the shoreline, they saw the bunker rising like a fortress of steel, bristling with automated defenses. Hale studied it carefully. In his time, this bunker had survived, ensuring the Pacific defeat. But now, with his knowledge, he could change it. The temptation was overwhelming, yet Monroe's voice haunted him. "What if you're not saving your world, but destroying another?" The assault on the comms bunker was hell itself. Waves of enemy soldiers poured from fortified gates, supported by towering mech suits that dwarfed even Hale's exo armor. Plasma fire lit the night sky as explosions tore the shoreline apart. Hale fought like a man possessed, leading the Marines through the chaos with impossible precision. Every bullet he fired was guided by memory of battles already fought, every maneuver a dance he had rehearsed decades into the future. The Marines followed with unwavering loyalty, convinced they were fighting alongside a myth. Finally, after hours of bloodshed, they breached the bunker. Inside, Hale planted a temporal disruptor, tech from 2095, designed to overload the bunker's systems beyond repair. "This will do more than destroy their comms," he warned the Marines. "It'll erase their entire command structure from this battlefield." The Marines cheered, but Hale felt no victory in his chest. As the device powered up, he realized the scale of what he was about to do. In this timeline, thousands of lives would vanish in an instant, rewritten by his interference. He hesitated, torn between orders and morality. Then the memory of Monroe's words returned. "Every choice branches reality." He pressed the trigger. The bunker exploded in a flash of white light that swallowed the horizon. Silence followed. When Hale opened his eyes, the battlefield was eerily quiet. The enemy fleet had fallen into disarray, their drones spiraling out of control without central command. U.S. forces surged forward, seizing the momentum. Honolulu, once doomed to fall, was saved. Marines cheered, embracing one another, some weeping with relief. To them, this was a miracle. But to Hale, it felt like theft. He had stolen victory from history, carving a new branch of reality, where millions lived. But at what cost to the original timeline? Was his world now safe, or had he only created another doomed universe? As he stared across the ruined shoreline, a child tugged at his armored hand. A girl, no older than 10, her face smeared with ash. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching a small stuffed rabbit. Hale froze, haunted by the memory of Monroe's childhood story. The riots, the family she couldn't save. Maybe this was the reason he was here. Not for generals, not for power, but to protect those who could not protect themselves. Yet when he looked up at the sky, he saw something terrifying. The air shimmered, rippling like broken glass. The timeline was fracturing. Hale realized then that his mission wasn't over. It had only just begun. The rippling air above the battlefield intensified, warping the sky like shattered glass. Hale's helmet sensors screamed warnings. Temporal instability detected. He clenched his jaw, realizing the explosion of his disruptor had triggered. More than just a military collapse, it had cracked the fragile seams of the branch reality itself. Around him, soldiers began to notice anomalies. A Marine fired at an enemy drone, only for the bullet to freeze mid-air before accelerating again. A fallen mech blinked in and out of existence, shifting between wreckage and pristine condition. Time itself was unraveling. Hale barked orders for the Marines to retreat, but they stared at him with wide, fearful eyes. "What's happening?" one of them cried. Hale didn't answer. He couldn't, because in that moment, a terrifying thought gnawed at him. Had he doomed this timeline by saving it? His mission was never about preserving worlds. It was about testing power. And now the cost of that test was bleeding through reality. The Marines fled toward safer ground, but Hale lingered, watching as the horizon folded like paper and glimpses of alternate futures bled into view, skies filled with alien ships, cities drowned by oceans, and even himself, older and broken, holding a gun to his own head. This wasn't just a fracture, it was a warning. Back at Chronos, alarms blared across the Nevada facility. Dr. Monroe stared in horror as the monitors displayed. Impossible data, overlapping timelines colliding, realities spawning like wildfire. The entire dome shook as the Chrono Gate pulsed violently, threatening to collapse. Scientists scrambled, shouting calculations and frantically adjusting stabilizers, but it was no use. "The branch is destabilizing," Monroe whispered. General Kessler stormed toward her. "Pull him back! Bring Hale home now!" Monroe shook her head. "We can't." The tether was severed the moment he crossed. "The only way he returns is if the timeline itself stabilizes." Kessler slammed his fist against the console. "Then make it stabilize!" But Monroe knew it wasn't that simple. Time wasn't a machine you could fix with wrenches and codes. It was alive, chaotic, and vengeful. And now that they had wounded it, it was fighting back. On the screen, Hale's vitals flickered erratically. Monroe's chest tightened. She felt responsible not just for Hale, but for unleashing a force mankind was never meant to touch. If he didn't find a way to repair the fracture from within, both his branch and their reality could collapse into nothingness. She whispered under her breath, "God help him." Hale marched through the broken city, his visor flickering with ghost images of alternate versions of Honolulu, some untouched by war, others completely annihilated. The Marines he had fought beside were gone, scattered into realities where they may have lived or died differently. Alone now, he felt the crushing weight of paradox. The child he had saved, the little girl with the stuffed rabbit, appeared before him again, but this time, she was older, a teenager in ragged clothes, staring at him with hollow eyes. Then she flickered, replaced by a corpse in the rubble, then by nothing at all. Hale fell to his knees. "What have I done?" he muttered. His mission had been about altering one event, one battle, but the moment he interfered, he had set off a chain reaction, spiraling far beyond his control. Suddenly, his comms buzzed with static. A voice pierced through, faint but familiar. "Hale, can you hear me?" His heart skipped. It was Monroe. Against all odds, fragments of her voice were bleeding across the temporal fracture. "You have to stabilize the branch," she said, broken up by distortion. "Find the anchor point." Hale gritted his teeth. Anchor point? He had no idea what that meant. But if Monroe believed there was a way, he would find it, or die trying. The anomalies grew worse with each passing hour. The city's skyline split into layers, some buildings flickering as half-ruins, half-pristine towers. Civilians ran through streets only to vanish mid-scream, replaced by soldiers from alternate wars. Hale's suit fought to adapt, but his systems were overheating. Then through the fractured horizon, he saw something new. A glowing sphere of golden light suspended above the ocean. It pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat, drawing the broken pieces of reality toward it. Hale's sensors identified it instantly. Temporal anchor detected. His chest tightened. This was what Monroe meant. Anchor points were fixed coordinates in time, events that refused to be erased no matter how history branched. If he could stabilize it, the timeline might heal. But there was a problem. He wasn't the only one drawn to it. From the fractured sky emerged figures unlike anything Hale had seen. They weren't human soldiers. They were temporal phantoms, shadows of people who had never existed, bleeding into reality from collapsed branches. Their bodies shimmered like glass, their eyes hollow. And yet their movements were predatory. Hale raised his weapon, but his hands trembled. He wasn't just fighting for survival. Now he was fighting for the very fabric of time itself. The first phantom lunged, its body warping unnaturally, limbs stretching like liquid. Hale's plasma rounds tore through it, but instead of dying, it dissolved into fragments of broken time, reforming seconds later behind him. He barely dodged, rolling through rubble as two more appeared. They weren't soldiers. They weren't alive. They were echoes of history's mistakes, drawn to consume whatever had caused the fracture. Hale fought ferociously, using every weapon at his disposal, but the phantoms multiplied with each second. He realized then that brute force wouldn't save him. The anchor point wasn't just a beacon, it was a repair mechanism. If he could reach it and stabilize it, the phantoms would vanish with the restored timeline. Summoning every ounce of strength, Hale sprinted toward the glowing sphere, dodging phantom claws that sliced through steel like butter. Memories flashed before his eyes as he ran. His fallen comrades, the Marines he saved, the girl with the stuffed rabbit, every choice he had made, every soul he had touched, burned into his mind. Reaching the sphere, he placed his armored hand against it. The light seared through his suit, flooding him with visions of infinite futures. Pain racked his body, but he roared, refusing to let go. For them, he growled. And with one final surge, he poured his will into the anchor point. The light consumed everything. When Hale opened his eyes again, silence reigned. The battlefield was gone. The shattered skyline of Honolulu had vanished, replaced by a vast, empty desert stretching beneath a blood-red sky. His exosuit displayed no coordinates, no year, no familiar data, only a flashing error. Timeline unmapped. He staggered to his feet, realizing he had not repaired the branch, but been cast into a liminal void between realities. The anchor point had saved him from collapse, but it had also exiled him to a place beyond time. Strange monoliths jutted from the sand, engraved with shifting symbols that changed every time he blinked. Whispers carried on the wind, voices overlapping, fragments of conversations that never happened. Then he heard one voice clear as day. "Ryan Hale, you don't belong here." He spun, weapon raised, and froze. Standing before him was a figure in tattered armor, his own face staring back at him. Older, scarred, eyes burning with knowledge. It was him, or rather another him, pulled from a collapsed branch. "You think you're saving your world?" the older Hale said. "But every step you take destroys another. Do you know how many versions of us have tried? Do you know how many failed?" Hale's blood ran cold. The two versions of Hale circled one another like predators. The older double spoke with bitterness, his voice cracked by decades of solitude. "I tried to fix it too. I found anchor points, I fought the phantoms, I stabilized timelines, but each time the fractures returned. Time doesn't want to be rewritten. Ryan, it wants to break us until nothing's left." Hale clenched his fists. "Then why are you still here? Why didn't you stop?" The older man's laugh was hollow. "Because I couldn't accept failure. Just like you. That's why we're cursed. To keep running through histories that aren't ours, saving people who don't exist, until we forget what home even means." Hale felt rage ignite in his chest. "You're wrong. If there's even a chance to save my timeline, I'll fight for it. I won't become you." The older Hale's expression hardened. "Then prove it." Without warning, he attacked, moving with deadly precision born from years of temporal combat. Plasma blades clashed, energy crackled, and the desert echoed with the sound of a man fighting himself not just physically, but philosophically. The battle wasn't about victory. It was about identity. The fight was brutal, dragging across dunes of shifting sand that warped with each strike. At times, Hale wasn't sure which of them was winning, or even which of them was him. Every blow revealed flashes of possible futures, one where he died on the battlefield, one where he lived as a wanderer, one where he conquered time itself. The visions blurred together until reality itself seemed to be watching, waiting to see who would emerge. Finally, Hale disarmed his double, driving him to the ground. The older Hale coughed blood, laughing bitterly. "Kill me, end this cycle. Take my place in the void." Hale raised his weapon but hesitated. Was this truly an enemy, or was it his own fear manifesting? Lowering the weapon, he shook his head. "No, I won't kill myself to prove a point. I'll find another way." The older Hale's expression shifted, softening. For the first time, he looked almost proud. Then his body dissolved into fragments of light, scattering into the wind. Hale fell to his knees, exhausted. Perhaps sparing his other self was the key, a rejection of the cycle of destruction. In the distance, the desert shimmered, revealing a new path of light leading forward. Hale followed the glowing path until it carried him to a towering gateway suspended in the air, its frame built of the same shifting symbols that covered the monoliths. Beyond it, he glimpsed fragments of countless worlds, a thriving Earth untouched by war, a ruined wasteland ruled by machines, a city where humanity lived alongside alien species. Each timeline stretched infinitely, a kaleidoscope of what could be. A voice resonated from the gate itself, neither male nor female, but vast and ancient. "Traveler, you stand at the Nexus of Time. Few have reached this place. Fewer still have left it." Hale swallowed hard. "I need to go back. My timeline, my people, they need me." The voice rumbled like thunder. "Do you seek to save them? Or yourself?" Hale's chest tightened. He remembered the little girl with the rabbit. The Marine's Monroe's desperate voice. He remembered his own father, lost in wars he couldn't prevent. "I seek to save them all," he said firmly. The gate pulsed with golden light. "Then you must choose one timeline to preserve. Only one. The rest will collapse." Hale's breath caught. The weight of infinity pressed upon him. He was being asked to decide the fate of countless worlds. Back in Nevada, Dr. Monroe stared at the Chrono Gate as it flickered wildly. For a brief instant, she saw Hale's figure suspended in the void, like a ghost drifting through the machine. Her heart leapt. "He's still out there!" she shouted. The generals dismissed it as an anomaly, but Monroe knew better. She had studied enough quantum equations to realize what was happening. Hale had reached the Nexus, the decision point where all timelines converged. "If he makes the wrong choice, he could collapse reality itself," she whispered. General Kessler snarled. "Then tell him to choose ours. We don't care about the others." Monroe turned on him with fury in her eyes. "Do you even hear yourself? You're asking him to erase trillions of lives just to protect one flag." Kessler didn't flinch. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm asking." Monroe's stomach twisted. For the first time, she wondered if, at the Nexus, Hale's mind was torn apart by visions. He saw Dr. Monroe in her lab desperately fighting the generals. He saw alternate versions of himself, a soldier raising a family, a deserter hiding from wars, a broken man lost in madness. He saw Earth thriving, Earth burning, Earth ruled by tyrants. The choices overwhelmed him, each one begging for existence. Then the voice of the Nexus spoke again. "One path, one reality, decide." Hale fell to his knees, clutching his head. He couldn't do it. Who was he to play God? And yet, wasn't that what his mission had always been? To rewrite history, to choose who lived and who died? He closed his eyes, and in that darkness, he saw the little girl again, the one who thanked him with the stuffed rabbit. Her innocent eyes pierced through the noise. Not power, not control, protection. Hale stood, breathing heavily. "I won't choose one," he declared. The Nexus trembled. "Impossible. Only one may survive." Hale shook his head. "Then I'll find a way to save them all, even if it kills me." And with that, he stepped into the gate, defying the laws of time itself. The decision ripped reality apart. Hale's body convulsed as the Nexus flooded him with raw temporal energy. His consciousness stretched across infinite worlds, experiencing every timeline simultaneously. He lived 1,000 lives in seconds, dying in war, growing old with a family, wandering alien galaxies, standing as both hero and villain. His mind should have shattered, but something held him together, his will. Anchored by the faces he swore to protect, he refused to let go. The Nexus screamed in defiance, but Hale screamed louder. For a brief moment, all the branching timelines overlapped, fusing into one impossible whole. In that instant, he became more than a soldier. He became a chrononaut, a guardian of all timelines. Light exploded outward, tearing through the void. Collapsing phantoms, healing fractures. When the brilliance faded, Hale collapsed, unconscious but alive. The Nexus was gone. The desert was gone. All that remained was silence, and then the faint echo of Monroe's voice calling his name. Hale awoke on the floor of the Chronos chamber in Nevada. Scientists gasped, rushing to his side. The Chrono Gate sputtered behind him, collapsing into sparks before vanishing entirely. He had returned. Monroe knelt beside him, tears streaming down her face. "You did it," she whispered. Hale tried to speak, but his voice was broken. "Not just one timeline." She hushed him, helping him remove the cracked helmet. The generals, however, were furious. Kessler barked, "What happened in there? Did you save our timeline? Did you secure America's future?" Hale's gaze hardened. "No, I saved everyone's." The room fell silent. Kessler's face darkened with rage. "You disobeyed orders." Hale struggled to stand, leaning on Monroe. "Orders mean nothing when they demand genocide." The soldiers in the chamber shifted uneasily. Some looked ashamed. For the first time, the illusion of control wavered. Days later, the Chronos facility was shut down. Officially, the government declared the project a failure, its resources redirected to more reliable weapons programs. But among the scientists and soldiers who had witnessed Hale's return, whispers spread of what had really happened, that a man had walked through time, faced its fury, and come back not as a pawn of power, but as a protector of humanity. Monroe visited Hale often as he recovered. His body was scarred, his mind burdened, but his spirit was unbroken. "You shouldn't have survived," she told him one evening. Watching the desert sunset from his hospital window, he smirked faintly. "Maybe I didn't. Maybe part of me's still out there fighting." She nodded, understanding. Hale had become something more than human, a bridge between realities. Though the Chrono Gate was gone, she knew time itself would never forget him. And neither would she. Years later, legends spread across America and beyond. Some spoke of a soldier who appeared in impossible places, saving lives before vanishing. Others whispered of a phantom guardian, who battled unseen horrors that slipped between worlds. The truth was stranger still. Ryan Hale, the first and last Chrononaut, wandered the fractured edges of time, not bound to one reality, but walking them all. He carried no flag, no orders. Only the vow he had made in the heart of the Nexus, to protect the innocent, no matter the cost. For him, the war was never over, but neither was the hope. And somewhere in every version of history, a little girl clutched a stuffed rabbit and whispered thanks to the soldier who saved her. Time had tried to break him, but instead he had become its guardian. The story of Ryan Hale was no longer just one timeline's history. It was a legend written across eternity,